The American presidential primaries are upon us, and the forerunner on the right is the billionaire Donald Trump. And the Republican Party establishment is quaking. Time magazine reports that the top Republican pollster Frank Luntz came out of a focus group meeting with rank-and-file Republican voters, and his legs were shaking. Why? Because Trump is a moronic Howard Beale of the right, channeling an incoherent grassroots anger at the old leadership. And he's getting a lot of attention. Media Matters for America reports that Trump was given more time than any other Republican presidential candidate on Fox News. But it isn't just Fox. As CNN reports, he leads among all broadcasters by a wide margin, getting more than 3 times the coverage of his nearest rival, Jeb Bush. And the reason? They say he's a ratings machine.
It's been a turbulent few months for Britain's Labour Party. After a general election which saw the worst Labour election result since 1987, Ed Miliband, then leader, resigned, triggering a leadership race. When Jeremy Corbyn, left-wing MP of Islington North since 1983, announced he was standing as a candidate, not even he expected to make it onto the ballot, admitting to the BBC that the first hurdle would be to meet the threshold of 35 Labour MP nominations. He was still 3 nominations short with 10 minutes to go, and just made the ballot after The Independent reported a last-minute surge, with MPs nominating him to broaden the terms of the debate rather than because they supported him. The bookies favoured Andy Burnham at 5-6. Jeremy trailed behind all other candidates with odds of 200 to 1. How things change. In the most astonishing event in living British political memory, Jeremy Corbyn, backbencher and unassuming socialist, is now front-runner to take the Labour Party reins, less than 10 years after Tony Blair. Peter Kellner from UK polling organisation YouGov told the Islington Gazette that he would be astonished if Corbyn doesn't win. One betting company spokesperson stressed that we can recall no other example of a 200 to 1 chance becoming an odds-on favourite in a political betting market in our 50-plus year history of political betting.
Perhaps no story has been given more international coverage, more controversial front pages, more dividing editorials and days of footage than the ongoing refugee crisis. Consider how in January 2015, only a few publications dared to talk about the ticking refugee time bomb, as Canada's weekly Maclean's put it. The article's author, Michael Petru, argued that without Western intervention in the by then nearly 4-year-long Syrian war, chaos would soon spread out. The West's lack of action will come back to haunt it, he added. Petru was, for better or worse, sending out a warning. Refugees are coming. A month later, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees PR chief, Melissa Fleming, is given a comment piece in The Guardian explaining why the situation in Syria was only going to get worse. Her words hope to speak to the humanitarian in all of us. She talked about schoolless children, stating that more than 50% of Syrian refugee children are out of school, as a quarter of Syria's schools have been damaged, destroyed, or taken over for shelter. She talked of widowed women, as almost 150,000 Syrian women in exile today had their households alone, describing how many of their men are dead or missing or otherwise lost to serious conflict. She talked of death tolls and a generation where thousands of children are being denied the nationality.
The Netflix show House of Cards, based on an original BBC adaptation of Michael Dobbs' novel, is in some ways a modern-day Richard III. The anti-hero, Congressman Frank Underwood, played by Kevin Spacey, reprising his unconvincing southern drawl from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, is a sly, cunning operator, an acute observer, an exploiter of human weakness, cheerfully throwing someone new under the bus each week as he struggles for political power. And he does all this with a cheerful wink and a monologue to the camera. He lets the audience in on his plots, permits them a sense of vicarious ruthlessness, allows them a wry smile at the venality of Potomacian affairs. It is incredible fun. But there is something else lurking, a political conscience, which gradually becomes clear throughout the series as Underwood accumulates political power, and we see what he uses it for. The first series begins as it means to go on, depicting the ruthlessness of its lead character by having him strangle a dog to death, having just watched it be run over by a car. He says, as he throttles the dying animal,
"There are two kinds of pain. Sort of pain that makes you strong, or useless pain. Sort of pain that's only suffering. I have no patience for useless things."
Then he walks into his house, having avoided detection, and cleans his hands. This is Frank Underwood, a sociopath, a ruthless killer, unafraid to get his hands dirty. Accompanying Underwood is his wife Claire, played by Robin Wright, who, while running her own environmental charity, is as ruthless and dedicated to his career as he is. But they form a ruthless team, which cannot but remind one of the Clintons. It is Claire who, when the pair are working to frame striking teachers for throwing a brick through their window, in fact thrown by Underwood's aid, comes up with the public relations slogan, "Disorganized labour." "I love that woman," Underwood explains in another scene as he parts with his wife.
I love that woman. I love her more than sharks love blood.
"7 years on from the great financial crisis of 2008, and all is not well in the world economy. Growth, having collapsed in the developed world, is now slowing in the emerging market economies, the poorer nations that make up 60% of the global economy. The world's debt pile has grown at an extraordinary pace, with $52 trillion added since the crash, taking the world's total debt to over $199 trillion globally. The wealth of the wealthiest continues to rise into the stratosphere, with just 1% of the world's population owning more than half the world's wealth, as Fortune magazine reports. Capitalism, far from facing an existential crisis, as perhaps some hoped and some feared, could be dusted off and set back on the road. Martin Wolf, star columnist at the Financial Times, previously a devoted enthusiast for the cause of globalisation, has become a withering critic of the current global setup. From the failures of the Eurozone to the sheer listlessness of the authorities charged with overseeing the world economy, Wolf has provided a forensic dissection of capitalism's current woes. More recently, he has covered a disturbing trend revealed in his article, "Corporate Surpluses Are Contributing to the Savings Glut." Whilst companies in the developed world are raking in profits as a share of the economic pie, UK company profits have never been bigger, they are failing to invest.
In January 2016, the presidential elections in Haiti had to be postponed because of widespread violence. It was widely reported in the mainstream, with coverage from Reuters to the New York Times, all showing scenes of roadblocks and burning in the streets. The Washington Post ran a piece detailing how, after cancelling its presidential elections, Haiti heads towards chaos. But what was left out of nearly all the articles was the overwhelming role of the US and the bodies it directs, such as the World Bank and Inter-American Development Bank, in guiding Haitian society towards oblivion. In the aftermath of the 2010 earthquake, the mass privatization of state-run assets and a turning of Haiti into a Caribbean sweatshop that the US had been pushing from the mid-1990s through the 2000s became a distinct possibility. This Huffington Post article, "Business as Government Capitalizing on Disaster in Post-Earthquake Haiti," shows how, since the earthquake, US firms have actually been involved in privatizing governance, in fact, the governance of another country. After the election of President Michel Martelly in May 2011, things remained easy for this private sector-led consensus. The international financial institutions and US not only had their shock event, but also their shock president.
Whenever there's a celebrity who needs to hawk a movie, a scribbler who has a book to flog, or a politician who has a war to unload onto a sceptical public, you will usually find them talking to a middle-brow sycophant throwing softball questions for up to an hour at a time. Who is this idiot? None other than Charlie Rose. Rose, a celebrated interviewer, has a personal net worth estimated at $23 million. If Rose is a journalist, it certainly doesn't show in any particular knowledgeability. However, as a powerful public figure, Rose has no difficulty in drafting the biggest names, the leading celebrities, and the top intellectuals. Consider Rose's fondness for the decrepit war criminal Henry Kissinger. In a notable recent interview with Kissinger, Rose begins by reciting Kissinger's various credentials, not failing to mention the absurd Nobel Peace Prize he received, having bombed both Vietnam and Cambodia and played a decisive role in the Chilean military coup. Of course, Rose mentions none of that and nothing that would stink of controversy. With such an ingratiating introduction, Rose adds warmly,
I am pleased to have Henry Kissinger back at this table. Welcome. It's good to see you. Good to be here.
His 2013 interview with Bono, conducted in a kitchen environment with his shirt collar unbuttoned, was an embarrassing love-in in which Rose was eager to treat Bono as an old friend whom he could exchange laughs with. As Bono expatiates on his free market, tax-avoiding solutions to poverty, Rose restricts himself to gentle questioning about Bono's personal mission.
Where does it come from within you?